Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on Saturday, a little bit early today for some Adventure Engineers. I am joined, as always, with the incredible Kelsey Dion of the Arcane Library. Hello, Kelsey.
Hi, thank you.
All
Such a
right.
nice intro.
Yeah, well earned. This is going to be fun. So, for those of you who don't know, our Sunday crew is about winding down Waterdeep Dragon Heist. We've got maybe 5 episodes left, could be between 4 and 7. Hard to say. And we've decided, even in light of the new adventure that came out, which we very nearly switched gears and we're like, let's do Ghost of Saltmarsh, we are going to stick with Storm King's Thunder. And to that end, today is going to be some prep work. And I asked Kelsey if she would lend a hand and help me think through some things. And we decided to let you all take a look at how we go through that. Did I
Yeah.
summarize that pretty well?
That was flawless.
Yeah, I've been practicing, and I practiced that in front of the mirror all day yesterday.
Thought you were gonna say in the shower.
Well, obviously, yeah, obviously planning in the shower. And so to that end, if any of my players are watching right now, Coach, Lid, Raven, Sean, niche, hang it up right now because there's going to be a lot of spoilers here. So for those of you who are going to watch the Storm King's Thunder campaign, hopefully there will be some fun things. You can be like, ooh, I knew that was coming. That was a lot of fun. And finally, hopefully this is helpful for people just thinking through the way I go about campaign preparation. Spoiler alert, it's not all that technical or well-defined. It's pretty ad hoc. But, hopefully some people can find some cool ideas for things.
Yeah, I'm excited because I know, I always look at things from a writing standpoint too, but seeing how people go about preparing their games helps inform the way you want to design your writing. So this for me is like my favorite kind of thing to do.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And again, I don't think it'll be super revelatory, but I think I can at least talk about what parts I'm excited about and what parts I feel like I need to. I'm not going to say fix because I think this is a really good adventure, but what things I personally need to inject to get more out of it and feel like and I know my players well, so the things I know I need to kind of cater to, right? All right. So without further ado, let's jump right into this. I'm actually going to take you to my notes screen so you guys can kind of see my notes. And I'm starting it off there with that incredibly, ridiculously awesome, evocative picture made by High Score Kid, who's right here in our chat with us right now. So Sean, thank you. You guys can just see how awesome this is and how it already gets me super stoked for Storm Kings. What do you think, Kelsey? Pretty good, huh?
This is fantastic. I love this.
Yeah.
Keep staring at it.
Sean knocked it out of the park. And there's tons of references, which we'll get to, but there's the airship that you wind up getting in, I think, Chapter 4. This is Skyreach Castle right here from Horde of the Dragon Queen, because that's going to make an appearance, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This is a character from our old days named Kothai, who is going to replace one of the giants that shows up in Storm Kings because he's a familiar character.
Cool.
And then, of course, there's blue dragon wings here, which is a little bit of a hint of what happens in the end. And, of course, some massive kraken tentacles. So just so cool.
I just noticed those. Those are so cool, that detail.
Yeah. He knocked it out of the
Brilliant.
park. And so these right here are the players. And you will find today as we prep, I'm going to be thinking very heavily about them because they're what's more important than the plot. And so I need to make sure things happen that elevate them and the plot resonates with them. So we're going to talk about them just briefly. This here is Everest. This is Lydia's Loxodon Knowledge Cleric that she will be playing. This is Tulak. This is Coach Sean's Paladin from the north. He's got this ancestral heirloom shield that's been passed down through the generations. This is Pharaoh. Sean is playing a goblin monk who's going to be sort of a bit of a freedom fighter. And this is Hakathra, which is Raven's arcane trickster rogue / warlock of a primordial god.
Nice.
Pretty excited about those characters. All right, so let's jump right in. So let's talk briefly, Kelsey, about kind of Storm King's the synopsis, right? I'm gonna back up just a little bit and go to the sort of what happens? Oops, I think I jumped a little bit ahead. Nope, I was right. There's
I
sort
have
of
the
this.
book ready.
Yeah, nice. Right, so essentially what's happening in this adventure is the giants are in upheaval, and the player characters sort of get involved with that, and then later help figure out this conspiracy that's being orchestrated at the top to really try to shatter any semblance of organization the giants had. It starts when the Allfather sort of looks at them and says, "Holy moly, hold on. Tiamat showed up, and y'all didn't even lift a finger. Like, what the hell? That's your mortal enemy, and you let the little people deal with it. This should have been your, this was your birthright. This is your heritage to deal with dragons. We always have." And so the Allfather essentially says the old ordning is done. But it's a little bit vague in the setup for what they need to do to kind of reestablish themselves. But the opportunity for all the giants to reestablish the pecking order is brought to them. Does that sound about right, Kelsey?
Yeah, I think, and I kind of like that it's purposefully not specific about what the giants need to do, because that leaves their behavior really open for you to like reveal and explain. And each giant clan's what they think they need to do is kind of like based on their own decisions, and it's revealing about what kind of giants they are.
Yeah, which is super fun. So right off the bat, here's something I gotta change as we talk about this a little bit, and I'll run some ideas by you, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. At the end of our Tyranny of Dragons campaign, I actually did have a tribe of giants show up and help. They actually crashed Castle Skyreach into the what was it called? The temple, Tiamat's temple, I guess it just was. They crashed in, and a bunch of these giants jumped out to help. They kind of kept all the other dragons at bay. But it was one very specific clan of giants. It's where Kothai comes from, and it's called Uldaveld, which was actually a chapter that was cut from Tyranny of Dragons. I couldn't find any text for it, but I found a map, and so I crafted an adventure around it and introduced this particular clan of giants. So
Wow.
Yeah,
what kind of giants were they?
They were frost giants, I believe.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're frost giants. So in a way, I don't necessarily think that frost giants as an ancestry are, free of the Allfather's wrath, but I feel like I want Uldaveld to get a little bit of a pass somehow. And so I've been struggling with that a little bit, that they're sort of like the Allfather's chosen now, because they were the only ones who rose to the challenge and did so in a pretty spectacular way, and had some major sacrifices and stuff. So what do you think? Thoughts on that? I know that's like a quick background on it, but
I love that. Well, and you know this too, but there is an opportunity in there for there are frost giants written into this adventure who are allies of the players and actually help them do some super key things.
Right.
So I think not only you can, kind of do like a switcheroo and just have it be, rather than those frost giants, your frost giants, and then And also because the ending is so up in the air about what the giants actually need to do to reestablish the ordning, like you could very well move the frost giants up the ranking because they did better than like the cloud giants, for example.
Yeah, that's cool. And you were spot on with replacing some of the key giants, and I have every intention of doing that. Early on, I think in chapter 1, a flying castle shows up, right? And it is
where is that?
Yeah, I'm looking for
Zephyros?
it here. Zephyros, Tower of Zephyros. And it's this super, frankly, kind of silly tower with a wizard hat, which I'm just going to say that's too far for me. Even if I were keeping Zephyros, I was like, it's not going to have a big goofy wizard hat on it. I just can't. I can't bring myself to
I know,
that.
it's too, I don't know. We must have like a really similar like aesthetic vibe for D&D, because I'm like, that's a little too goofy for me. Like,
yeah.
I would cut it, the hat.
The hat was going to get cut one way or another. But I decided to tie this in again for my players to something they're familiar with. And I'm essentially replacing the role of Zephyros with Kothai. And he will instead show up with Castle Skyreach. We just did a one-shot. It is called the... Oh, gosh. I can't remember, the Gallows of Ash and Bone. We did a one-shot where it was in a very Odin-like, because we've made our at least Uldaveld specifically, very Norse-like. Kothai kind of did the Odin sacrificial, tied himself to the tree, and was able to speak with the All-Father and get some insight into the world. And in so doing, he got Skyreach operational again. So I think he'll replace that role.
Awesome. That's actually really fantastic then. So already, see, and that's not the person I would have guessed that he would replace, but now that you told me that, it makes perfect sense. So.
Oh, yeah. I thought about him having replaced the other person who I think you're thinking about. And I did accept that there's a sacrifice that happens with that character, right, in Chapter 4. And I just couldn't bring myself to kill a player character. But I did ask Sean. I straight up was like, hey, how would you feel if Kothai died in this adventure? I gotta know. And he was like, I don't think so. And I was like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But that would have been awesome. It would have been a really cool moment.
Yes. Yeah.
So to your point, I'll just jump ahead a little bit. That's in Chapter 4. Oh gosh, Chapter 3 is so crazy long. Chapter 4, where it is what's his name? Hognash or something? Hargath? I can't remember.
Is it Harshnag? I think
Harshnag. Yes, there it is, right there. Harshnag.
He must be a Harshnagger. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like you didn't wipe your sword down. You got to wipe your sword down after every fight.
I know.
So Harshnag is going to be replaced by a character that has never really come up on our streams, but is an old character for us, and that is Queen Chorus, who became the Queen of Uldaveld after her father, Blagothgis. No, that was her uncle. Either way, she became the Queen of Uldaveld, and so I think she's going to be this sort of, she's going to replace Harshnag straight up. Like, I think she feels a responsibility, like, yeah, I've got to go out and I'm going to help these people that Kothai met earlier because he said he trusted them, and so I'm going to go be the one to help them. And she sees the opportunity of, like, to fight Imrith, the blue dragon. I think she'll take that. So it'll still be felt by the players, but it won't be quite as awful as as if Kothai had died.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that because I think having like a more supporting cast person do that was the intention anyway originally, so that I think that's a good choice.
Mm-hmm. So besides that, that's where I'm at. I haven't made a whole lot of meta changes to the game. There are obviously some decisions to be made, right? And those decisions are, let's see, where's the little flow chart? Right here.
That is such a good flow. By the way, I was like admiring this. I was like, this was such a genius thing to include. And I don't think it's the last time they did a flow chart, but it might have been the first time.
I think it was the first, yeah.
Yeah.
It's super helpful.
This thing right here.
Yep.
Genius.
It is. It's really, really handy. So I'll walk you through this at a high level, and then I think we can start digging in on some stuff. I don't have a lot of direction, so feel free to just be like, hey, hold on, can we talk about that? I won't be offended.
Okay.
So we're going to start with a great upheaval. However, I've started my players at level 4. I think we're just kind of over right now being level 1. I think everyone was like, oh my god, I gotta play a character at level 1 again. I don't think anyone really wants to do that. So we're going to start at level 4. I'm still going to pretty much go through all of A Great Upheaval, but I'm going to liberally cut things. There's a whole Zentrum subplot at Nightstone. Gone. I'm just going to cut it. And I'm going to change the fight. So they're not going to be fighting goblins. They're going to be bigger nasties. Probably just hobgoblins or something just a little nastier than goblins.
Perfect, yeah.
But besides that, I think it can be run pretty straight up.
Yeah, and it's kind of just a nice intro adventure too, because I think I was admiring it. I was like, wow, it has a lot of it feels very open. Like the players can kind of just go wherever they want to go, and there's some pretty classic D&D opening scene things there too, like like a walled city that you need to help save, and it has like a kind of moat house looking thing. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a great little setup, and with plenty of decisions to be made, and plus it's super cool. I mean, I love the idea that there was this stone that no one really understood. That's why the town was named this, and these giants showed up in a flying castle and stole it. That's pretty. I mean, that piques the curiosity, right?
It does, yeah. And it's cool. I feel like a lot of really great adventures, like adventure paths that are massive, sort of start with this really small, like microscopic look at how this whole struggle is affecting regular people.
Right.
And I think that's really important. That's kind of like a classic way to build empathy for the people who are just the innocent bystanders of this whole gigantic issue. I think it's like narrative wise, putting the players in that crisis situation is the best way to show it to them, instead of just saying this city was ransacked all the way across the other side of the land and you heard about it and now you have to do something. Like, no, you got to put them there.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great opportunity to meet the NPCs and really develop relationships with them and feel for them, right? That's great. And taking a step back, I'm not going to start right where the game starts. I really I tried this kind of cold open with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where we kind of started right in the middle of something. And I took some inspiration from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And yes. I wanted, the opening there. It's like he's right in the middle of these weird negotiations in some nightclub in, is it Shanghai? I forget. And like, clearly, there's a ton of backstory going into it, but you don't really need to know that. All you know is, he drinks some poison. He needs to get the antidote, right? It's a great opening. And Indiana Jones does that, all three of the good ones kind of do that same formula, right? There's something that starts right in the middle of something. And so what I'm going to do is take that opportunity to try to figure out how to get my players together, this is a major thing I'd love to pick your brain on, ideas for kind of getting them together. But I'm also going to plant some seeds for much later. And so one of the things I realize is the Kraken Society plays a major role in this adventure, but they aren't really mentioned very much. Right? They're not really. They just kind of appear towards the end.
Yeah, that was one, like, I don't know if I'd call it a criticism, but like eyebrow raise that I had is that they turn out to be a incredibly important villain that you don't even know about the majority of the game, which, come on, you can, right. It's way more fun to beat someone who you can't stand than to just learn about them and then beat them.
Right. And the same is true for Imrith, the dragon. I think she, first of all, we're going to talk about this in a second. She doesn't even change her name. Like, she shows up as Imrith in King Hecaton's court. I'm going to change that because I want Imrith. There's a ton of really cool lore about Imrith, right? She turns adventurers into gargoyles. She has this lair in the Anarok Desert. Like, she's awesome. So that's a thing we're going to come back to. So here's my thinking. I want the adventure to start on the casino ship, the casino barge in Yartar, which you go to much later when you kind of find one of the coins, so that the players have some familiarity with that.
Yes, I love that idea. That's such a great, and it's like a very like pulp kind of way to start them out too.
Exactly. Open it up with some of them gambling and some of them kind of hanging out. I've talked to them a little bit. I think we want to go through the kind of initial greetings for the most part. Like, everyone kind of have the opportunity to get to know each other. Initially, I was thinking, let's just pretend you guys have already been together. But we walked that back. So we're going to pair them off. I think that always makes it a little easier. So Pharaoh and Hakathra will have traveled together for a little while. And so they're going to be there together. And Hakathra I'm going to utilize to really drive the plot forward. So hear me out. This is a little silly. She sells snake oil. So one of the things she thought would be cool is, like, she makes these little concoctions and sells them and moves from town to town, like, before she can get driven out of town. So I was thinking, and I forget his name now. I'd have to go back and look. There is the owner of the boat. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Yes, I'll find it, but yeah.
Yeah. And so I was thinking she sold him a particular tincture to help perform an activity. And I think he's going to barge out red-faced, with one or two consorts at his side and, like, call her out in the middle of everybody gambling. And so that will set off the sort of, like, that's where my head is right now. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I love that because I love opening with conflict, like exactly what you said. It's like very Indiana Jones. I think it's like a technique called en media res.
Yeah, it totally is, because that's one of my favorite terms and concepts.
Yes, and it's I I guess I don't always like make absolute statements, but I think that is the best way to start any kind of
Oh yeah,
action-based scene or adventure.
yeah.
Um, what was his name? Lord Dryland? Does that sound right?
That sounds right. Yeah, yeah.
This guy with the octopus?
Yep, that's him. And so I
Mhm.
think, he's sort of, will have bought something from her to help perform an activity, and then it didn't work. And so he's going to be, he's going to come out looking for blood, enraged and embarrassed. And so I think,
Yes, and I love it. It demands action.
yeah,
Like the players
yeah,
must respond to that change. It's not like they're going to be milling around being like, "Hey, I don't know you. I've never seen you here."
right.
Um, there'll probably be combat like right
Oh,
away,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I think
or
a
loud
classic,
arguing.
like a high society bar fight would be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
And
Oh
so
my gosh.
yeah. So to that end, before that happens, before that event comes and shakes everything up, I have to work to get the characters working together and knowing each other. So
Mhm.
Hakathra is going to be the point of his ire, and Pharaoh and her are already like allies, so they're going to be good to go. I've got to think about what I'm going to do with the other two, and so here's another thought I had. Lydia is playing Everest, a Loxodon knowledge cleric, and I think I'll have Everest engaged in a conversation with another scholarly type who is relaying all of their information about the worms of the north. And so that serves another purpose. I'm going to flat out mention Imrith. I'm going to flat out mention what's the clumsy one? The Flying Misfortune, because the Flying Misfortune comes up later. And then some other red herrings too, like Voal Hamanthar, the one in the Mare of Dead Men, and maybe a Shardalon, like just kind of talking about worms of the north, so that I can
Yeah,
get that information out there.
that is so cool. And I didn't realize how many there still were to like
Yeah,
in reading through this adventure, like re-looking through it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's cool dragons sort of planted everywhere. Isn't there even
right.
one that lends them an airship at some point? Like,
Yeah, I'm gonna change that up a little bit, but yes, I think that's how that goes down. But I kind of, as I was reading the adventure, I was like, I think in episode 1, I have to mention Imrith and I have to mention the Kraken Society, because those are the big bads that otherwise you don't find out about until way later.
yeah, I like that idea. It's just a better story to know kind of who the villain is, or to at least because then they'll think back to that first session when it's revealed, and it'll make much more sense. The world will seem more contiguous to them.
Yeah, definitely. And Sean just made a comment about nods to tyranny. Absolutely going to mention dragons that the players are familiar with. So,
Ooh.
yeah, that'll be great. Okay,
Do
so
you
with that in
think
mind,
like
oh, go ahead.
just based on that is I feel like this adventure is one of the most interlinked to another adventure path, which
Mm-hmm.
is the Tyranny of Dragons, out of any of them that they've done.
Definitely. Which is awesome, because Tyranny of Dragons is where we all started. And we
Mhm.
played it for, a year and some months. So it's where, like, all of their first D&D experiences are, and I think they're going to really enjoy that. At least I hope, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if Everest is getting this information about a dragon, I think I'm going to have Tulak, which is Sean's character, Coach Sean, who's a going to be a little bit of a fish out of water. I don't want to go too hard on the like, oh, what's this weird society? I think instead he's a little bit desperate and gambling to make money, and probably failing. And obviously at the same table as Pharaoh and Hakathra. So here's where I haven't connected the dots. I know I want them to all escape together with a plot hook of Nightstone, leaving the bar fight, and I know where I want it to start. I'm not 100% sure how to be like, cool, you guys can now work together, and you form this little ad hoc alliance, and now you got a GTFO off this boat before it gets bad.
Right. So, okay, so the only real outlier, the only character who doesn't have a connection
Mm-hmm.
to who was it again? It was I'm
Yeah,
so bad.
no problem. No, I know you wouldn't expect you to know the characters. So, really, Everest and Tulak won't necessarily have a connection to the group, although I'm thinking about having them be pre-connected before this as well, like just traveling together in some capacity.
Yeah, that might make it easier.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think like what would an adventure, I mean, if they have like heroic tendencies, they would probably side with the adventurers against the guy from the ship who's clearly mean. So
Right.
I guess maybe depending how you think that first situation will go down, we can find a thread in there that will convince them to help each other.
Right.
So do you think they're going to negotiate, or it's going to be a big like brawl? I guess it's hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, I want to nudge it towards a brawl because I think that'd be the most fun. And I do think the big barren bad guy is going to want blood, essentially, for his extreme embarrassment.
Yes.
So yeah, I do think it's gonna veer towards violence. Plus, that's D&D, right? We got to roll some initiative on episode 1, and that's the opportunity. And that's a good suggestion, Sean. That Tulak kind of loses all his money to them, and then they could be like, "Hey, man, you want to earn your money back? Help us out here." Can't guarantee that they'll do that, but I do like the idea that kind of in the opening he's already lost his money to them. I also think I want to plant the seed for Nightstone kind of prior to the bar brawl breaking out. So I think there's going to be some drunk at the table talking about Nightstone and like that's where he's from and how much help they need. They have a little spat with the elves to the north. I think he'll mention the goblins to the west, like, just how adventurers are needed. I think he'll even flat out be like, "What are you guys, adventurers or something?" And then he'll probably tell them about Nightstone, so they'll at least know that hook.
Yeah, and you could even like pitch it as something that he's willing to bet. Like he's at a coin, but he'll bet a secret knowledge that he has.
That's a good
idea. Then he loses.
I gotta add those to my notes. That's really good.
It's kind of fun. I think that'd be fun. Like and I think they're having a few desperate gamblers in here, like who are almost out of coin and they're willing to like bet knowledge or like deeds or loyalty might be interesting. Like you could leverage that.
That's fantastic.
And maybe you could have an NPC suggest it, like, the half of, like, if Tulak doesn't have any money, someone could be like, "Well, bet your loyalty then," or something like that.
That's so good. That's so good.
And then hopefully they'll honor it. I'm sure they will.
That's a fantastic idea. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's wonderful. So that's making a lot of sense. I think if I get them together, plant the seed for Nightstone. They've already learned. They're not necessarily going to know about the Kraken Society yet, but they're going to know the surrounding things, and they'll have those coins. Remember, they have a distinct wooden coin from the Grand Dame, and so they'll recognize it way later in the adventure.
Yeah, I think that would be so cool because that was another thing where like they get handed this coin and they're like, "What's this?"
Right.
But if they recognize it immediately, that's like an excellent like cliffhanger or anything. Right. You end the session there and everyone's like, "What?"
Yeah. Because otherwise it's like, now you got to go research to find out what this is, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of boring. Blood Oath is a good idea too, Shifty. That's pretty sweet also. I like it. And that would work, I think. Yeah, good stuff. Cool. Okay. So I think that gets my setup pretty good. I mean, from there I can kind of just wing it with where it goes. But essentially, we open with them gambling. I'm going to do a couple of character flashbacks, kind of interspersed, because I think that's a fun way to be like, here's who this character is, without going around the table like, okay, so Lydia, tell me about your character, and then, well, they're 25 years old, and like, I don't want to watch that. Nobody wants to hear that. So we'll have a flashback. And by the way, I am having Everest come from the Asen tribes in Chult, where the Loxodons are, because Loxodons aren't really in Faerun, but Lydia really wanted to play one. Elephants are her favorite animal. So I decided that they're sort of this, they have their own tribes and everything, but they kind of travel around the Asen tribes to be these oral tradition storytellers and historians. And so, yeah, so they sort of, so I think she knows, doesn't have a personal relationship necessarily, but knows King Raimi. So that'll be a fun, players like having stuff that they're familiar with. So
I love it.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, they're Ravnica Wiley, but I'm just, whatever. She wants to play a Loxodon, that's no problem with me.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think I've got the opening then. We'll open up. the characters are all hanging out and gambling. We'll have some flashbacks. We'll have some opportunities for them to get to know each other a little bit. They'll find out about the Nightstone hook, and then all hell's gonna break loose when the owner bursts out in his nightgown, red-faced and furious, and demands blood. He wants Hakathra killed, or whatever. And so the guards will kind of spur into action, and they'll be fighting over casino tables and stuff like that. So I think that'll be a super strong opening.
That is awesome. And then I'm sure whatever escape they plan will be like super epic. Maybe they're like,
yeah.
Do you think the boat's going to be like at sea, or is it going to be?
I think it'll be in the river, because Yartar is on a river, right?
Oh yeah, so, that's true.
Yeah, I think it'll be in a big river. I mean, I'm thinking it's a classic like casino riverboat, right?
Yeah, like a New Orleans or something, like
exactly. Just like yeah, and I'll have jolly boats kind of on either side, so they could jump on and row away, or however they want to escape. I'm not going to prescribe how they escape. That's half the fun, right? Exactly. Oh, that's a great point, Sean. Yeah, the owner wants her tongue.
That's a pretty.
I'm gonna call him.
That'd be a bad one.
Yeah, I need to put his name in here, but I'll get that later. Owner of the boat wants her lying tongue. Nasty. Yeah. Cool. So I think that'll be really fun, and that'll probably take up all of the first episode. So we probably, just like Waterdeep, won't actually get into the adventure proper until episode 2. But I think in that time we'll have established a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
And then at that point, I mean, do you think you'll probably like cut to them approaching the town then, like assuming they escape?
Probably will. I don't remember how far Yartar and Nightstone are from each other.
Well,
you know what? Map of the Sword Coast. Let me look that up.
Yeah. I mean, unless they have some kind of really dramatic encounter on the way.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. So here's Yartar here. And is Nightstone even on the like main big map? I think it's only in the Storm King's Thunder map. But I mean, this is the Deseret Valley, right? Pretty much through here. So this is the Deseret Valley. I don't know where. Let's see.
Where are you?
Map of the Sword Coast, Storm King's Thunder. There is a map in the book itself, isn't there?
There is. This is the.
Here we go. See if you guys can see that. We got Yartar there. Where is Nightstone?
Dang. We'll find it.
There's Red Larch. Yeah, either way, it doesn't really matter. I tend to use pretty narrative travel anyways, because, unless it's fun. Oh, man, here's a little tangent. I saw someone recommend a way for travel, because travel to me is always a little hard to make really interesting, because, random encounters don't advance the plot any, and they can be fun, especially if you've done like a lot of roleplay. Now let's just go fight something in the woods. That'll be fun as like a change up. But if you're really playing by the book and travel and you fight like 5 or 6 things on the road, it's kind of like, cool, this isn't really advancing the plot anywhere. And frankly, it slows down player leveling if you're using milestone leveling. So I heard someone mention something that I think sounds like a really cool idea. It was essentially you use montage travel and you let the players determine an encounter. And you do that by being like, okay, Kelsey, remind me of the tale that waylaid you all as you tried to cross the river Serban. And then you as a player get to be like, well, it was raining. And you set the scene, and then I take back over to play that out. And we play out what happened there. But it kind of happened in the past, even though we're playing it out. And so we get to hit the 1 or 2 highlights of the travel. Maybe it's a role-playing encounter. And in some ways, it puts the ball in the player's court. And they can decide, like, well, am I feeling like a fun role-playing encounter, or do I want a big combat right now?
Yeah, I like that. That's actually a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And then it gives them opportunity to, like, inject backstory and all of that.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to try that, especially for really long travels. I might roll a d4 and be like, okay, I rolled a 3, so Sean, you get to pick the moment now. I don't know. It's an idea I'm kind of formulating, and I could see it backfiring if they're like, man, I got nothing. Like I don't have any ideas right now, because it is putting them on the spot, and not having time to prep. But I could also preface that by being like, hey guys, the next 2 episodes are going to be travel episodes. Think about some fun encounters you would like to do, and be ready for the setup. I don't know. That's kind of where my head is. But there's a lot of travel going on in this campaign, and I think a fun way of approaching it is kind of necessary.
I agree. That is one thing that I was struggling with. How would you tackle? Because this adventure, more than any, has the opportunity for you to just go explore the overworld. And I mean, the whole 3rd chapter, which is massive, is dedicated to outlining suggested encounters for like every little city and grove and lost fortress castle thing. And like, so down to the math of D&D, and I'm sure this, this, and this makes sense to everyone, but the purpose of a random encounter is to drain resources for as sort of almost a punishment for taking too long to travel or not taking the safer path or something. So, and it's the whole idea of like getting to 6 encounters a day, and then anything over that is the players are not going to be able to like deal with that, so they have to plan carefully. But
that just becomes a slog if you play it by the book.
Yeah, it's so grindy, and so I feel like people, especially in streaming situations, are shifting toward how can I make random encounters be narrative instead of like resource draining. And so, and if it were me, I mean, I personally think you make it a harder encounter if you have to have a combat and you have fewer of them.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I think that can spice it up by being fun, but also abbreviated. Like, okay, you guys are traveling 300 miles. We're going to spend 1 episode on that. And then you're there. It's not going to be the next 9.
Right.
Sorry.
Like there's no, totally. Like I agree with you. Like it's way more fun to have it be a narrative thing. And if you really find that their resources are not being drained enough, you could even arbitrarily say it. Like you're out of supplies. You've all gained 1 level of exhaustion because you had to travel through a snowstorm. And like, you don't have to roll that. You can just
that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I love that.
Should you need to, if you're like, they traveled so far with no consequences, but we don't want to play 16 random encounters, I can just narrate how that affected you guys.
Yeah, that's super cool. That's a great idea. Man, I love that. I kind of want to codify some of that a little bit. I don't know. I might write something up on like narrative overland travel, and maybe we can collaborate on that. Just some ideas for narrative overland travel.
That would be cool.
I've been monkeying with my own 5e minion rules lately, and we've really started to come up with some pretty cool things of like these groups of 5 to 6, because I tend to have 5 or 6 of a particular model, and so they it's 5 or 6 monsters, and they get 4 reinforce actions, whereas a bonus action they replenish 3, or they have 12 bad guys behind them. They get advantage if there's a lieutenant leading them. They get disadvantage if they're below half strength and their lieutenant's dead. Things like that, and kind of changing their damage. And we've done a couple of really big fights lately, like our big boat fight where a boat smashed into the other boat, and it was super fun.
Nice.
So it'd be fun to codify some of those rules, because, man, I think overland travel done in that way sounds really fun to me.
Yeah, it would kind of cure the problem of like, because you don't want to inflict forced boring encounters on the players, and like everybody, I think that 95% of the time a random encounter is boring.
Yeah, because it's just there. It's like, there's a beast ahead. Oh no, what is it? Oh, it's a hydra. Let's fight.
And if its purpose is to drain resources, how about we just cut to the draining resources then?
Yeah, that's a great idea. And focus on the fun ones and cut to the draining resources. Okay, so here's Nightstone, and Yartar is way up here where they're starting. So I think I probably will just skip ahead. Like, I'll be like, cool, you've been on the road for X weeks. You traveled through Waterdeep, maybe, blah, blah, blah. You've now arrived at Nightstone. And in that way, we can have episode 1 be a little bit almost like a streamed session 0. And so when we get to episode 2, which opens at the gates of Nightstone, the characters can now have several weeks of background with each other. So we can have some additional familiarity
Cool. I
Yeah.
love that. That's genius. Like a streamed session 0 that's like centered around action to like demonstrate who your character is rather than just say who they
Right.
are.
Yeah, and that's what we did. That's what we did with Waterdeep Dragon Heist, right? Our session 0
Yeah.
was not the main plot in the least,
Mhm.
but it got everyone introduced. They had flashbacks to introduce the characters, and then when actual Waterdeep hit, they were already kind of working together. So
Yeah.
I think that'll work.
Excellent. So
All
we're gonna
right.
do that. And then do you have a plan? How much we have 15 minutes
Yeah,
ish.
I know. We're time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What were you gonna ask?
Well, I was going to ask you this because like we just mentioned, actually, there's so much content that probably won't see the light of day in these books.
Right.
Do you have like a plan for, because also this adventure doesn't have any kind of time pressure, like
Right.
overarching time pressure, which is similar to Curse of Strahd. So how in that situation, like how do you keep your players on track? Because
Yeah.
you don't want them exploring the countryside for 9 sessions in a row, even though that might be fun for them. It's sort
Right.
of like,
Yeah.
how do we keep them on track?
Good question. So really, chapter 3 is the one where I think you really need to get them on target, and I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do that just yet. But I do think I'm going to have, like, I'm going to let them play around for a little while, and then Queen Chorus, the Harshnag replacement, will seek them out and be like, "Hey, you met Kothai a couple of weeks ago, and he is my loyal subject. And he told me that you all are trustworthy, and we believe in the power of individual adventurers. And unfortunately, the adventurers I know are far too busy to help us right now," or something. Like, "Will you help me?" Kind of that appeal. I'll think about that message because I think that could be a little contrived. But I think that's how I'll get them back on track. Like her finding them and being like, "I need your help. Will you help me?"
Cool. Yeah, that's a smart way to go. Like having the NPC sort of be like, "Hey,
Yeah.
come this way."
But I do think even after chapter 2, I need some guidance for the players. I know my players well enough that I don't think they would be happy with like, "Okay, guys, episode 5, what do you do?" Like, you can go anywhere you want. I don't think that's viable. So what I might do is try to have 2 or 3 potential hooks coming out of chapter 2, after saving the town. Which, by the way, we didn't talk about that decision. As I looked through the choices, I really, really love Bryn Shander, but I think I'm going to do Tribor instead, because Tribor is centrally located to everything the players are familiar with. It's kind of near everything that happens later in the adventure. And I also like that it's fire giants, because I think I want to do fire giants again for level 8, like that section. And so I kind of like the idea that they might, if there are any survivors that recognize them and have this kind of feud going on again.
Ah, okay.
What do you think about that?
I like that. I mean, I think that the town you choose has to tie in to the giants they're going to go after. So, I mean, I think that's going to work. I hope it works.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think Tribor is also near. Well, again, it's kind of near areas that my players are familiar with, so I think it won't be as like, "Okay, you were way far away in Tin Towns, and now we're back to the Desserin Valley where kind of everything is again." I don't know.
True.
It feels like a big departure. But Bryn Shander's setup seems like the coolest of the 3, but I think Tribor's pretty good too.
Yeah, I was looking. I did happen to look the most detail, or with the most detail at Bryn Shander, but they all have like a cast of NPCs that the players essentially get to like take on.
Yeah. I will say I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think I'm going to let them each control an NPC. I think I will have them there. I think that adds additional complexity at an already like kind of high level. I mean, they're going to be level 5. I just don't want to like explain new game mechanics to them. I'm going to think on that.
And that literally would make combat go twice as slow.
Right.
So,
Whereas I think I can kind of narrative like, okay, they run over there and kill this bad guy without even rolling it. You can just kind of, this is the story that's happening, I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna ask your take on that because it's definitely like the one and only time I've seen wizards do that. I could be missing something,
Yeah.
but where they're
No.
suggesting that players play an NPC in addition to their character. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess they were trying something out, and it's a neat idea. And we do frequently have NPCs. Like Meepo is a permanent NPC in one of our groups that we play every now and again. But I don't know. I'm like, I think players already have a lot on their plate, and it's frankly pretty
yeah,
straightforward for me to just add a couple NPCs there.
yeah, I would shy away from like personally. I always shy away from anything that makes combat slower or
Right.
adds rules complexity for no real reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it adds a lot letting them control an additional NPC. I think you can still form the emotional connection with the NPC long before the fight, and then
Mhm.
I don't think them controlling it adds anything to them really. So I think I'll opt to not do that.
Cool, cool, cool.
Moving forward, there's a couple other things I'm gonna cut. There's one I think in chapter 4, maybe you show up to the Oracle. And the Oracle's like, cool, now go gather these MacGuffins, and then I'll answer your question. I think I'm just going to cut that entirely.
Yeah, that was so contrived to me. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's so not necessary.
And also, it frankly kind of requires grave robbing, right? Like,
True.
don't you go to, like, giant burial grounds and steal artifacts?
Yeah, they're like the sites of like they're like the grave sites for these barbarian tribes, and I'm
Right,
like, that's
that's what it
kind of
is.
weird.
Yeah.
Why you gotta go do that?
Yeah. Oh, maybe if I need one thing, because it's kind of a gate, it kind of slows you down. One possibility is, you have to go get one thing back from someone. Someone stole something from the giants, and if you can return that, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, it's just like that did seem like so shoehorned in. Like, oh, you've made it here. You've overcome these challenges. Now go run this little task for me before I'll tell you anything.
Right. I don't want to do that, especially because I think that's building up towards a big emotional scene right there where Chorus is going to sacrifice herself, keeping them safe from Imrith, and immediately following a pretty epic moment where they're going to get an airship, which is pretty sweet.
That is cool.
Right? Right? And I'm going to change it up a little. It's not going to be gifted. They're going to beat down some dragon cultists who have they're scattered after the events of Tyranny of Dragons, and they're sort of serving Imrith, and they're going to kill them and steal their airship, and Chorus is going to keep Imrith tied up long enough for them to escape with it. I think that's what I want to happen there.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great idea because then also it's because I think like the original story was that there was like an additional dragon who was watching all this from afar and just sent his minions to help them because it was convenient for him.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that'll work pretty good. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to go through a little bit more at a high level of things I'm looking at. Then there is a theme I want to focus on, and actually, Sean, you mentioned a good like frost versus fire theme. That's a cool theme too. But so I'm going to come back to that quickly. I will say I plan to do 2 side quests. I picked up 2 adventures on the DM's Guild. I actually do not know the author. I think they're using a pseudonym. And that pseudonym is Valor RPG. But they have one side quest called Flying Misfortune, where you meet the dragon Flying Misfortune, the gold dragon, I forget his real name, early, and you kind of help him from some Zentarum who were trying to kind of capture or kill him, because he keeps destroying Zentarum shipments. And then he shows up later in Storm Kings if you go the Cloud Giant route. They've sort of captured him. So I'm going to supplant that. I'm going to pick that little bit out, put him in with the fire giants, and then have them get introduced to him earlier, so that he's just a character that they meet, free him, and he's like, oh, cool, thanks for the help, y'all. See you later. And then they help him again, and that allows me to have him show up at the end and be helpful to them. Because who doesn't want a cool dragon ally dropping in when you least expect it, right?
I love that, and it's kind of cool because like at the end, he'll kind of be taking the side of the giants, which is unusual for a dragon, but cool.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that'll be neat. And then the other thing I'm going to do is he has a side quest called the Kraken's Gamble. And right around level 7 or level 6, kind of between there, you travel back to the ship in Yartar and get like a little hint of the actual Kraken Society, but still not the full picture. So that lets me have a couple of touch points there. So early on, you don't even hear about the Kraken Society, but you kind of introduce to the ship and the kind of big bad boss. And then later you have this little adventure. It's kind of cool. Like you find someone washed up on the shores of a river, and it sets off this whole plot within Yartar. And then at the end, of course, they find out what's really going on and get into some crazy epic stuff. So again, I'm trying to like preface things that happen later.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There was some lack of foreshadowing of the Kraken Society and stuff, so I'm glad you're addressing that.
Right. So that's pretty much my high level plan. I'd love to revisit this in maybe a couple episodes and see where we're at, because at that point we'll probably be starting, and so we can kind of take a closer look at later things. I think we really hammered out the way I'm going to open now, which I think is fantastic. But one last thought. I was thinking about the characters, and I really want to make them the focus. Obviously, they need to be. It's not my story, it's theirs. And one of the things we did with our giants, I mentioned earlier that they had this sort of Nordic vibe to them, right? This very Norse, like Viking. And so a lot of the player characters at that time were sort of honored by getting their giant names. And so I looked up Old Norse, and I think you played with Kothai. He referred to them as their giant names. And so he was Brimskir, which means beast bearer, because he was like friends with all the animals. And what were the other ones? There was like Andlat. There was one that was like the Grey Wind, and all these cool, like they sort of were bestowed these giant names. And I want Queen Chorus to do that for them just before she sacrifices herself. Like honors them all with their special little giant name. And when we did that, they all got a rune like tattoo somewhere that gave them some very minor magical effect. And so I think she'll sort of do that, right? The like blessing of the All-Father. And I was thinking about the characters and what their names might be, and I think there's a possibility for some cool themes where we've got a Loxodon knowledge cleric who is like truth. And then there is a monk, goblin, who is wisdom. And we've got a paladin, who is like light. And then we've got an arcane trickster, rogue, who is shadow. So I'm thinking I want to play with those four things. Truth, wisdom, light, and shadow in some ways, and weave that throughout the adventure in some subtle ways.
Genius. No, that is so smart. Like, I love that. And weaving it in is going to just make it stronger then when you reveal, when you do the big dramatic moment. Yeah.
That's the thing. I want to have those terms used so frequently that when she gives them their Norse names, which are going to be those words, like the Loxodon will be truth, the goblin will be wisdom, they will be like, oh, damn, we've been hearing about those things this whole time. And she gives us those names just before her noble sacrifice.
Yes. Right? Genius. That's brilliant.
I think
that's good really DMing.
Cool. So I got to think about ways to make sure that's getting woven in. So those of you who have watched today, you can be on the lookout for these things when Storm King's Thunder drops. And you can, kind of wink, wink, nod, nod a little bit when that happens.
Yeah, that's so cool, because now you guys will you have some behind the scenes knowledge, so you'll see how Steven actually pulls this off, which is amazing.
Right. Cool. Well, we're pretty much out of time. Kelsey, any other thoughts? And at the same time, anyone have any questions out there? Please feel free to sound off. Happy to answer anything.
Yeah, I'm just really looking forward to seeing you actually put these plans into motion. It's pretty epic that you know the right kinds of things to reach for, like repeating themes that you can weave in, and how to add more foreshadowing. That's just such good DMing. So I'm pumped. I think this is good planning.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I can't wait. I think Storm Kings looks like a fantastic adventure. I think the characters that the players have come up with are just stellar. I've started thinking about flashbacks for each of them to kind of get to know the characters. I don't want to spoil any of those because those will be fun to watch. Yeah, that's kind of, this has been really helpful. I really kind of solidified some ideas here, so this was super fun.
Cool. When are you starting then?
I'm trying to gauge when Waterdeep's actually ending. It's just a little nebulous as I kind of drive towards the end, but I believe it won't be any more than 5 episodes left. Could be as few as 3, but I'm guessing it's probably 3 to 4. So we still probably have a month. And then
Got it.
Then we'll kick it off. Good question, Staggering Giant. He asks, are there any parts of the adventure where you think it could fall apart? I think Chapter 3 looks to be the most problematic, and as I've read other people's experiences, they seem to think it's the most problematic as well. But I think I'm armed going into it. Like, I should just have some hooks pre-planned. And frankly, what I'm going to do is look at the coolest places and think about the coolest stories that I can do and give them a reason to go there. Besides that, I think once you get past Chapter 3, it's pretty linear, really, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think that's cool. There's lots of different ways to solve the challenges, but I think from there the narrative beats are pretty clear.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I've heard too, is that that's the place where people can sort of lose the thread of the story. So as long as you have a way to address that going into it, I don't see why that would be a problem. So
yeah. So I don't feel uncomfortable with any other parts of it. I think the very opening episode, getting them together, is always a challenge, and then Chapter 3 looks slightly challenging, but I'm really not that concerned about it. I think I can manage to give them a thread.
we should do a whole like after it concludes some time from now, we should do like a whole postmortem and be like, how did that go compared to what we thought it would do?
That's a great idea. We can also do, and I guess in the last minute or two, I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Would love to hear ideas on what you guys would love to see from us next. But Kelsey, I was thinking, and it's probably, again, going to be 5 or 6 weeks, would love to do a postmortem on Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
Yes,
if you're down for that.
Absolutely. That sounds cool.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about next time? Ideas? I know we have tons of adventures we could review, but what else? What else you got?
I don't know. Maybe we should throw like some polls out on Twitter and see if people have suggestions. Like, I know we haven't done too much of a Q&A like recently. Maybe we can set aside like 15 minutes for people's like DMing or writing questions, something like that.
Idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we could put a couple options out there. Like, one, I would love to hash out these minion rules and perhaps even some codified rules for narrative travel. I think you could come up with, like, you could bound it with rules. You could even include some roles, like, okay, Kelsey, what happened on that bridge back there? And then you give me a setup and I say, okay, cool, everybody roll perception, and that kind of sets the opening scene or something. Like, we could codify it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I could even see some like great roll tables that still have the randomness, like you have an event and then the severity of its outcome. So you're like, what happened on that bridge that caused you to become so wounded,
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. So that'd be fun to maybe hash out on stream. But anyways, we're a little bit over time, and I like to keep our promise of keeping these right to an hour. So thank you, everybody, for joining. Kelsey, thank you for joining. That was so much fun. I'm so excited.
Me too.
Oh, man, you're going to be coming down for Poe. You should stay through Sunday night and come be an NPC in one night for our Storm King's Thunder adventure.
I would love to do that. I think we should make that happen.
Yeah. All right. We'll plan on that. So thank you guys again for hanging out, and we'll see y'all tomorrow night. Adios.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.